Have you ever felt alone on your spiritual journey, wondering why God seems distant? Picture this: a seed buried in darkness, isolated from the world above. Yet, it's in this solitude that it grows. Could your season of isolation be similar? In the next few minutes, we'll explore 3 reasons why God isolates His chosen ones. You'll discover how this time apart prepares you for your calling, develops your spiritual gifts, and leads to your elevation. Are you ready to see your isolation in a new light? Join me as we uncover the purpose behind these challenging seasons. By the end, you'll understand that your isolation isn't a setback, it's a setup for something greater. Have you ever felt like you're wandering in a spiritual desert, parched and alone? It's a feeling that many of God's chosen ones experience. A season of isolation that can leave you questioning everything. But what if this wilderness isn't a place of abandonment, but a divine training ground? Consider Moses. Before leading the Israelites out of Egypt, he spent 40 years in the wilderness of Midian. There, tending his flock, Moses learned patience and humility. He traded the opulence of Pharaoh's palace for the simplicity of a shepherd's life. In that stark landscape, God shaped him into the leader he would become. When God isolates us, He's preparing us. It's as if He's taking us into His private chambers, away from the world's distractions. In this quiet place, He begins to strip away the layers that don't serve His purpose for our lives. Think of isolation as a refiner's fire. Just as intense heat purifies precious metals, removing impurities, so too does God use these solitary seasons to purify our hearts and minds. The process may be uncomfortable, but the result is a faith that shines brighter than ever before. I remember a time when I felt isolated and forgotten. After moving to a new city for a job, I found myself unemployed within months. In that season of loneliness, God refined me. I developed a deeper prayer life and learned to find my identity in Christ, not in my circumstances. Psychologists recognize the benefits of solitude for personal growth. It's in these quiet moments that we can engage in self-reflection and gain clarity about our values and goals. When we're constantly surrounded by noise, it's easy to lose touch with our inner selves and with God's still, small voice. So what if your current season of isolation is actually a divine appointment? Maybe God is using this time to prune away the branches in your life that aren't bearing fruit. Perhaps He's strengthening your roots, preparing you to stand firm in the storms that are coming. In this wilderness, God might be teaching you to rely solely on Him. Like the Israelites gathering manna daily, you're learning to trust God for your daily bread, whether that's physical sustenance, emotional strength, or spiritual insight. Are you feeling frustrated or impatient in your season of isolation? Consider this. What if your current circumstances are actually God's spiritual gym? Imagine God using this time to stretch your soul, increasing your capacity to hold more of His power and purpose. Just as physical muscles grow stronger under resistance, your spirit might be undergoing a divine workout. Think about David, the shepherd boy anointed to be king at just 15 years old. God didn't immediately place him on the throne. Instead, David spent years in isolation, tending sheep, facing giants, and hiding in caves. This wasn't wasted time, it was preparation time. God was expanding David's capacity to lead, worship, and carry the weight of a kingdom. Paul, too, after his dramatic conversion, spent significant time alone. In that solitude, Paul's understanding deepened, his theology solidified, and his capacity for ministry expanded. What if God is doing something similar in your life right now? Maybe this isolation feels uncomfortable, even painful at times. Growth often does. But what if the discomfort you're feeling is actually the stretching of your spiritual muscles? What if God is preparing you to carry more of His presence, power, and purpose than ever before? In these quiet moments, you might find yourself encountering God in new and profound ways. These divine encounters have the power to change not just your circumstances, but your very nature, aligning your desires more closely with God's heart. Interestingly, Science seems to support this idea of isolation, leading to expansion. Studies have shown that periods of solitude can enhance brain function and creativity. Researchers have found that when we're alone, our brains have more space for cognitive processing, often leading to innovative thinking and problem-solving. So what might God be expanding in you right now? Perhaps He's increasing your capacity for patience, faith, or love. Maybe He's stretching your ability to hear His voice, discern His will, or stand firm in adversity. Or perhaps He's preparing you for a calling that right now seems too big to imagine. Remember, God doesn't waste anything, not even isolation. He uses these seasons to increase your spiritual capacity, preparing you for the work He has ahead. Just as a runner trains before a race, God is training you now for what's to come. Have you ever considered that your current struggle might be the very path to your greatest triumph? What if the isolation you're experiencing isn't just a challenge, but the key to your elevation? It's a powerful idea worth exploring. Think about Abraham. God called him away from everything familiar, into a place of isolation. But this separation wasn't a punishment. It was divine preparation for greatness. God was positioning Abraham for an unprecedented blessing, using his time apart to shape him for an extraordinary purpose. You might feel stuck right now, wondering why God has led you to this lonely place. But what if, in this very moment, God is doing His most profound work in you? What if He's expanding your capacity and positioning you for an elevation beyond your wildest dreams? Consider David's journey. Anointed king at 15, he didn't take the throne until 30. Those 15 years weren't wasted. They were critical for his development. In those quiet, lonely moments, God was shaping David into the king he would become. Or look at Paul. After his conversion, he spent years in the desert of Arabia. This time of isolation became the foundation of his entire ministry. God used that solitude to reveal truths that would shape Paul's life and impact countless others. Have you heard of post-traumatic growth? It's the idea that adversity, including isolation, can lead to significant personal development. People often emerge from challenging times with increased resilience, a deeper sense of purpose, and a stronger connection to their values. Think of isolation as a launch pad. Just as a rocket needs a stable platform to blast off, your time apart might be the very foundation you need for an incredible spiritual ascent. It's not just about surviving this season. It's about expanding, growing, and preparing for what's to come. So what if God is positioning you right now for elevation? This season of isolation isn't just a holding pattern. It's the preparation for your greatest spiritual launch. The gifts and purpose God has instilled within you, often revealed in solitude, are being honed for His glory. Are you ready to embrace this time of preparation and see where God might be leading you? What if your season of isolation is God's love letter to you? A divine invitation, not punishment. Ms. Mzwake Tancredi notes, isolation is the mother of greatness. Your quiet space might be where God is crafting your greater purpose. Picture isolation as a cocoon. You feel confined, yet God is reshaping you, revealing hidden gifts. It's in the valley we find strength to climb mountains. Will you embrace this as a spiritual greenhouse, nurturing future growth? Tancredi reminds us, when God isolates you, He wants to elevate you. You're set apart for something extraordinary. How will you prepare for God's elevation? Remember Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. What steps will you take to align with God's transformative plan?